hey Grace, I was able to connect with Tim and Emily Dennison this last week. They're part of our church community. Usually they're in Laos where they serve as teachers, but with everything that's going on, they've had to come back to the States, and they're in the Lake Geneva area, so I was able to connect with them over Zoom. And they've got quite a story to share about that transition from where they are serving to being back in the States. So I hope that you can be encouraged by their story. So take some time to listen and to connect with someone in our community who happens to be serving overseas. All right, well, hi Grace. I've got Tim and Emily Dennison here with me. You may not know them. You might, but Emily is the daughter of Rich and Linda Austin. And so they're here with us. Why don't you introduce yourself real quick, and when did you guys get married? How many kids you have? Just let us know a little bit about yourselves.
Yeah, so we're the Dennisons. I'm Tim. And you said this is Emily, yes. And well, let's see, we've been married for 10 years this summer. And we got married in your building. So
Grace Church.
Same with Hannah and
myself. Always a good memory. And yeah, we have two kids, two little girls. June is 5 and Johanna is 3. And we've got one more on the way.
Right.
Yep, I'm due in about 2.5 weeks from this interview recording. So we have our 3rd daughter coming soon, and yeah.
So we are talking virtually right now, but you are actually living really close to where I'm at. You're in Williams Bay. Usually you're in Laos where you serve as teachers, but recently you had to come back. Life is changing for a lot of people, and you guys had a pretty quick turnaround to get back to the States, and quite a dramatic story. And I thought that some of the Grace family would want to hear a little bit about that transition from Laos back to the States.
Yeah, you bet.
Can I start first of all by just saying thank you so much to this community of people, because just the kind of thread through our story these last weeks and months has been, the faithfulness of the Father, and also just our community really covering us with a lot of just heavy lifting, we've been calling it. People really just covering us as we've literally made the journey across the world, but also just as we kind of navigated the different changes that we were watching happen unfold. So thank you so much for your support, for your emails, and just for standing with us in the midst of a lot of uncertainty.
Yes.
Yeah. So I guess we have been back in the States now for about just over 3 weeks, I believe. Mm-hmm. And we were just commenting that it's so strange, because in some ways it feels like it's been months and months since we've been in Laos, but it was not even a month ago that Tim was teaching at the university, and we were just living our everyday life still. So it's just been a very strange season.
Yeah.
Do you kind of want to?
Yeah, I'll kind of share the story of how we got here. And maybe I'll start by saying that initially our plan was to be in Laos until sometime this summer. We had looked at kind of the end of June coming stateside, similar to what we did last summer. So we saw a number of you last summer, and because we're tied to the university academic calendar, it makes sense for us to be stateside for a couple months in the summer and then go back and teach. And we were going to have our baby in Laos, and we had networked and found a midwife that we really trusted and felt good about. And anyway, as things kind of started happening in the world, we just realized that some of these plans were going to get shaken up here pretty quickly. And sort of the first sign of trouble came prior to our annual Thailand conference. Our whole organization meets for this really amazing conference in Chiang Mai. And at that point, a lot of the folks who serve within our organization, can I say this? in China, they were at our conference, but they got word at the conference that they would not be able to return to China. So Laos, which shares a border with China, kind of follows, I don't know, it follows in step. If China makes a big decision, sometimes Laos will follow in some way. And so we started worrying at that point, like, oh my goodness, what's going to happen with Laos? And anyway, things in Laos stayed pretty quiet for a long time. But we did through conversations with our midwife realize that it wasn't going to work for her to come to Laos anymore, because she was actually going to be coming from Australia to work with us. And so that conversation happened. We realized that those birth plans were sort of off the table. And so all of our other birth plans involved likely scenarios in which we would cross the border and go to Thailand. And those scenarios became, I guess, as the weeks ticked by and the days ticked by, those scenarios became less and less safe, I guess, and just more and more improbable. So
what was the date for, like, around?
Yeah,
what was it? It was early February that we first,
early February that we started thinking about some of this stuff. But then I think it was mid-February that we decided we have to go home. So just to put that in perspective, it was the middle of February that we figured we're going to have to get out of here, just because all of our birthing options are kind of like shutting down around us. And at that point, everyone else in Laos was like, this is not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
It just changed so quickly.
That's what I was going to say, is the landscape it was really hard to kind of read the scene, to kind of know what was going on, because we were, both sets of our parents were, concerned and wanting us to sort of reconsider our options, and we were taking their concern very seriously and wanting to make a wise decision. But also it felt so normal in Laos. Like everything was normal. Nobody was talking about it.
Right.
Yeah.
It was just sort of this, like, it's China's problem is kind of the attitude. And so when we first started talking about it, we were saying, like, if this were to get really dangerous and borders were to close and we would start having to, like, work and think about quarantine situations, all these things, we were presenting our community with this in Laos, and everybody was kind of like, seriously? Like, these are...
I mean, people were super respectful.
We were very supported, but it wasn't like, that wasn't the kind of climate that we were in at that point.
I think we were very much aware that we were potentially coming across as maybe kind of like panicked, spooked, or like hyper, like extra paranoid. But also, I mean, we should say that our community of people that we're talking about in Laos are people, most of them are single folks in their mid-20s to mid-30s, and they have kind of become quite comfortable with taking on a lot of risk.
Yeah.
And so we, as people with little kids, we had a different set of considerations, and as we're thinking about having a baby, we had a different set of considerations. So, but anyway, the timeline then really became that after we decided that we need to go to the States, we bought tickets through South Korea. And this is, again, probably like February 20th that we bought these tickets.
It was about February 20th, because I remember we bought the tickets for March 20th.
Yep, that's right.
1 month.
Because we figured in that date, March 20th came about, which like just happened the other day, right? But but March 20th was chosen because we figured, all right, this gives us a month to kind of wrap up things in Laos. Things in Laos are still really sleepy, like no crisis on the horizon here. So it gives us time to wrap up at the university, say goodbye properly, and also it was kind of, March 20th was kind of pushing what we figured would be our legal timeline for flying, because you can't fly internationally after you're a certain number of weeks pregnant. So
can I actually speak to that really quick? That was very interesting. So I scoured the internet on all of these airline websites to find out when I could fly, like at what point I could fly up until. And over again, I saw 36 weeks. Like, you can't fly past 36 weeks. And so, and I double checked our airlines that we ended up booking through, and that was the case. 36 weeks was the case. And so I think I was like, on March 20th, I was like 35 weeks and 5 days or something like that, like almost 36, but we're just going to make the cut. So
which sounds,
it seemed fine.
Yeah.
It seemed smart at the moment.
I think all that to say, what we were doing was like just not wanting to leave Laos, right? I mean, like we didn't want to just like leave. We just didn't want to leave. I mean, our life was in Laos.
And I should say also that he's a teacher at the university, and we were asking our team to cover a lot of his classes. I mean, 2.5 months of classes for him.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like we had a lot of kind of desire to stay as long as we could, just to help kind of, shoulder the load as long as we could.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then thank the Lord for Rich Austin, because at one point, and I should say, both sets of our parents were, like Emily said, they had voiced a good bit of concern, and I think both of them were somewhat out of character in that they were just like, look, here's what we kind of think you should do, and
they usually
don't do that. And so it kind of caught our attention, and we're like, wow, all right, maybe we need to think about doing this. And so, but even after we had bought those tickets to leave on March 20th, I remember Rich was kind of just like, maybe you guys need to consider bumping that a little bit soon. Because at that point, and it just speaks to how quickly things were changing, too, I mean,
at that point, South Korea kind of
exploded in the virus.
Yeah, and so,
And actually, so then what happened was our flight through Seoul, South Korea, half of the leg of the journey was canceled. Our flight from our city in Laos to Seoul was canceled. And I found this out like by word of mouth. I didn't get an email from Lao Airlines or anything. It was like, well, we're not going to be flying on that flight, I guess, anymore. So, and thankfully we had bought some like a flight protection plan and whatever. Anyway, so in the meantime, we're like, all right, we can't go through Seoul anymore. We're going to try to bump this thing up a little bit. And so then we ended up buying flights through Frankfurt, Germany, because that felt super safe.
Yeah, thinking if we go through Europe, we'll definitely be safe. It's longer, but safer.
And also, it's not like we were living under a rock. Like, we were reading the news, trying to stay informed. And again, this stuff was just changing so rapidly. Like every week and really every day, it's like the global scene just changed. And so we were in this position of trying to like maneuver and respond and be responsible to get home on time, but also like not leave prematurely. And anyway,
I remember I talked to my parents on March 1st. Could that be true? I think it was March 1st, because I remember saying, okay, we can't go through Seoul. We have to find a different way back. How long do you think we have? Like, what's the longest we can wait? And I remember my dad, they kind of looked at each other and they said, I think within 10 days. Like, I think you need to come home within 10 days. And they said a week. They said a week. Right. And I said, okay. And then I got off the phone and I said, 10 days. They said a week, and we looked, we just looked at the calendar.
And we were looking at flights.
It was like we had to find the right kind of combination of flights and Tim's work schedule. So we made our flight for March 10th then. And so this was one really interesting way that the Father really provided for us. So we have this, suddenly we're down to a week to pack up. Like, we thought we were going to have the rest of the month, and we're down to kind of getting our life packed up, saying goodbyes. Luckily we have a teammate who's staying in our house, so we didn't have to completely pack up. We were just sort of getting packed to come stateside. But I happened to be, so we buy these flights. We're going to be going through Bangkok, Thailand, to Frankfurt, Germany, to Chicago. And I just happened to look up, after we bought the tickets, I'm looking up information to get the right medical certificates for me to travel at this point in my pregnancy. And I find that our flight on Thai Airlines from Bangkok to Frankfurt, they had a restriction of 34 weeks for flights over 4 hours. And so I started hyperventilating. It's like feeling so nervous. I look up and I start doing the math, and I was 33 weeks and 6 days pregnant when we did that flight. So I literally was within 1 day. And I really felt like that was another way that he just like covered us, even though we didn't realize, like, I didn't even know we were going to be pushing it so close.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we somehow got packed up and said goodbye. And then I remember thinking, I won't believe it until we're on the plane. Like, I won't actually believe that we've made it. Like, there was just such a sense of, like we've mentioned before, the landscape was changing so quickly that I just had no certainty that we were going to, make it. And so then we board our flight we get to Bangkok, we get on the next flight to Germany, and about it's supposed to be a 12-hour flight, and about 7 hours into the flight, we have an emergency landing in Baku.
Which, by the way, if you don't know where Baku is, don't worry.
Yeah,
we did not either. And we were like, what is happening right now?
Entering into like Star Wars. Like, where? Like,
it turns out Baku is a city state somewhere north of Iraq, right?
Iran. No, yeah. Iran? The only thing I could recognize on the map on the plane was like these cities in Iran. So I was sort of, we make this emergency medical landing, and I'm, first of all, like, I literally don't know where in the world we are right now. Like, I feel so disoriented, and this poor German man is struggling to breathe. Anyway, this whole like medical emergency that's literally unfolding at the seat next to us. It was this man.
And of course, the people were coming on the loudspeaker. The pilot was on the loudspeaker on the airplane saying, "We're gonna have to turn around and make a medical emergency landing." And so everyone on the airplane is like, "Oh my goodness, we're on a death trap full of coronavirus. Like, why are we making an emergency?"
Yeah.
Because it wasn't clear what the landing was for.
We get to Baku, and the medical professionals from Baku enter the flight, and they're in their full what are they called? Their full coronavirus suits, and they're trying to help this guy. Anyway, we were on the ground for about 4 hours before we could fly off again. So our 12-hour flight turned into like a 16.5-hour flight. And so then we arrived in Frankfurt, and we navigated our way through, got to a hotel, fell asleep in the middle of the day, didn't know what way was up.
Everybody, you have kids with you.
Yeah, right.
Yes. The 17-hour plane ride was...
Yeah, just in case anyone's forgotten.
Yeah, I know.
It was a good long stretch of sitting still.
There were some low points on that flight. So we get to the hotel, fall asleep in the middle of the day in Germany because we're so confused about time zone and everything. And then we wake up in the middle of the night in Germany, but it's daytime in the States. And we start finding out that the travel ban is going into effect, that all flights from Europe now are like, we didn't understand all the details at the point, but we were literally sitting in Frankfurt finding out that the following day they were putting on travel bans for the flights from
I think
Europe.
What was unnerving about that was that the president had made the statement banning flights from Europe while we were in Frankfurt, and at that point we did not understand that there actually was some nuance with that, and we could have made it back, but at that point we were just like, well, we're having the baby in Germany.
Yeah.
So it was.
Oh, goodness.
I just feel like around every corner it was just trying to manage our expectations and deal with unexpected circumstances that we had no control over, which really, is, everyone can say that.
Yeah.
Like, we're not.
Yeah.
Everybody has some solidarity in this story, I think so.
Yeah. So we got to the airport the next morning with plenty of time, trying to make sure we would, if we needed time to navigate lines, or we just weren't sure what it was going to be like when we got there. And
you went just to let's see what happens.
As far as we knew, we were still going to be able. We had our flight technically was one of the last flights out of Europe that should have been able to land.
And so we were checking online to see if our flight was canceled or not canceled, and
so we kind of just, honestly, it felt like the Red Sea parting. Like, we just showed up, walked, like the airport wasn't even, I was expecting it to be insane, and it was just sort of like this weird, eerie, just normal, and we just walked, and there were lines, but we got onto our flight, we crossed the ocean, arrived in Chicago, and just kind of like snuck. I mean, we just got right through customs and immigration and walked out, and it was like, what? Like, how did we just make that? You know,
it was super surreal.
It was so surreal. And then the next day, so we got back on, I think it was March 12th that we landed in America, and on the 13th was the day that there were like 4 and 5 hour lines in customs and O'Hare. Like, we literally missed that by a few hours too.
Oh my goodness.
So
yeah,
so it was a really surreal experience. And then we made it. We got tucked into this little rental house in Williams Bay and battled jet lag fiercely for a few days. And I feel like it was really interesting. You know, I feel like the Father provided us so much. There was just a lot of peace in the midst of it, and I just feel like He gave us a lot of strength and perspective. And then we made it here, and it was really interesting because I think those first few days, rather than feeling so relieved, I felt really shaken because I realized how close, like just how quickly it could have gotten into a very desperate situation. Where I feel like we were still able to we were just ahead of you know, the curve, and a few days later, a few weeks later, we would have just been in such a different situation. And it was really kind of sobering to get here and just, I feel like it was almost like too close for comfort, you know?
Right.
There was, just to kind of add on to that, there was a family that left Laos a couple days after us, but still before that March 19th date that we had initially chosen. And they were able to get out, but it took them a week of being laid over in, they were laid over in Bangkok for a couple days, and then they flew to Tokyo, Japan, and they were laid over there. And we kept getting photos from them of these, like the flight boards, the schedule boards at the airports. And it was like, just down the line, everything was canceled. And so they had a number of flights that they had purchased that ended up being canceled out from under their feet. And then they had to scramble. And so, I mean, it literally took them 7 days to get 7 days of travel to get around the globe. So as you know, as much as we felt like our story was like a trial or something, mostly we just felt so cared for and so grateful that it all worked out the way that it did. So
wow.
So again, just to kind of reiterate something that Emily said, we're just so grateful for for the community of folks who were lifting us up during that time. And I think we felt sustained by that and truly, and protected and just really cared for. So
good. Well, how are the little ones doing? I mean, that's a whirlwind of travel for them, and now they're in Williams Bay. I don't even know, like, you guys have been, I saw you at the gas station. You were, you know, you had the work gloves on, so you guys haven't gotten out. I'd imagine that maybe you haven't seen too many people, but how are your kids doing in all of this?
Yeah, you know, we had a very strict quarantine for the first 14 days we were here, and thankfully, praise Him, we've all stayed healthy and have had no issues, no symptoms or anything. And so that was a relief. And I mean, the girls they've done really well. You know, it's hard for all of us because we miss Laos. And there's just a lot of home, the sense of home, feeling like looking for a, you know, home right now feels a little, it's hard to kind of know how to like create home when you've just had so much transition and so much uncertainty. So for example, like we thought we were going to be in this house for 2 weeks, and now it was looking like we're going to be here through the end of April, maybe longer. There's just no real clear, I'm not really sure where we're going to be living next, sort of thing. Right. But in the midst of that, you know, thankfully I homeschool them in Laos, and so there's been a lot of consistency in those things. Like a lot of our routines and rhythms are the same, and they're used to kind of playing together a lot, and we've been able to get outside a lot here, play, which has been really nice.
Okay, hey, so maybe just two last questions that we're probably all interested in is, while you're back in the States, what kind of things you have going on? What are you doing? And also, what is the near future? I know you can't know everything, but what does it look like for you guys in the near future as to what you might be doing?
Yeah, it's good. You want to talk about what we're doing now?
Sure.
About our future?
Sure. Yeah. So right now, Tim was just cleared to start doing some work at Golden Years. He's back on the grounds crew there. So we're just really, really grateful to have that opportunity for him to be working and contributing in that way. And it's kind of created some really necessary, just normal routines back into our life. And yeah, I'm home with June and Johanna waiting for this baby to make her appearance. And once the baby comes, like I said, we're not really sure where we'll go next. Hopefully we'll be able to move in with family, but it's just such a strange time with trying to kind of protect everybody you love from germs and from each other, and I don't know. So we'll just see how it all pans out on that front.
Yeah, and as far as our future is concerned, I think we're with a lot of people in a lot of different organizations and things, just in a world of uncertainty. I think one thing that's worth mentioning is that when we first went to Laos, we made a 2-year commitment. And so the end of this year is the end of that commitment. But
the end of the school year.
Right, yep. But partway through the year this year, we had kind of spent a lot of time thinking about and asking about potentially extending that 2-year commitment into another year. And that kind of became what we decided we felt compelled to do. So when even when we left Laos, we didn't leave with the sense that we would never come back. But I think right now, even since we left Laos a few weeks ago, things have changed dramatically as well. And so the point with all of this is we just do not know what the future holds. And
can I really quick interject?
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that it's changed so rapidly here in the States for sure, but it's also changed really dramatically in Laos. And I just wanted to mention that all of those things that we were afraid of happening if we'd stayed, every single one has come to fruition. So all of the borders are closed, no flights into Laos, and they have COVID-19 now in Laos, and it's spreading. And so it's just an incredible mercy that I really feel like the Father gave our parents and our midwife and just the people who we were seeking direction from a lot of foresight, because truly we would be in a really, really difficult situation right now had we stayed. And so all of our teammates who are in Laos right now, everybody else decided to stay, and now they are all in lockdown and can't leave their houses and don't know when they'll be able to leave the country.
Of the 20, I think there's about 28 folks in Laos spread throughout different cities. 15 of them are still in Laos. Eight of them are in the States. So
we're 4 of those 8.
Yeah, so they're there indefinitely, and I think there's just a lot of questions about the future, the future in Laos and the future of our organization. I mean, there's just a ton of uncertainty, and so in some ways, it's less about us and our decision, and more about what's the global landscape going to be in August when we would be returning to Laos. And so, I mean, yeah. So the question is really a difficult one, and it's one that we think about all the time, every single day. But at this point, there's not, what can we do? And so we're just kind of waiting and
trusting that the path will become clear when it's the right time.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Oh, well, hey, I want to thank you guys for just taking some time to update us and share with us just an amazing transition where the Father has led you well. And we're all looking forward to things beginning to become somewhat normal, and then seeing you soon, right? So, but until then, you guys stay well and safe, and thank you again for taking some time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for your interest and for your support in this whole process.
Yeah.
All right. Well, have a wonderful Easter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes,
You too.